Conference will now be recorded.
All right. So in advance of, first of all, a thank you to Jan for sponsoring Lunch and Learn. That's in honor of the yard site of your father, which was this past Monday, was it? Monday. And that is Shmuel Wolf, Ben, Ben David Bear, and Basha. Okay, good. So thank you very much for sponsoring. And delicious soup, compliments of Jan and Vivian. And our learning should serve to elevate the soul of your father. That and all the other wonderful things that you do. Jan should all serve as a tremendous merit, zechut, for him and for all those who help produce you. Okay? All right. So, as you might have noticed from the heading, right, Thanksgiving and Halloween. So you might notice a little foreshadowing of where we're going to go with this. Who understands my foreshadowing? Yes, yes, but the foreshadowing of the way I presented it.
Slippery slope. You start with a very kosher sounding holiday like Thanksgiving, and you end up with a
Oh, that's interesting.
holiday like Halloween.
Okay, so Steve wants to say pshat to learn the understanding in the way that I wrote the heading is that you start off with Thanksgiving and then you never know where you might end up, even with a Halloween. Okay, do you see how? Do you see the paper though that I'm referencing, Janet? Yeah. Okay. Yes.
That they didn't very much do Thanksgiving because if they did, they were too exhausted to do Shabbat. Nothing should trump Shabbat the next day.
Okay. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I see it slightly differently. I see that there are things that start out as idolatry, one way or the other, but they can also be Jewish forms of thanking Hashem, praying to Hashem, worshiping Hashem, because their core has nothing to do with idolatry. The same way
Okay.
that
Good. So we'll come to that idea. Good, Leah. You want to say anything, Leah? Yeah.
Basically, I was trying to say that both originated in a different culture. It's not the
Okay.
original
Okay.
holiday that we got from the Torah or the Chazal or whatever, the rabbis.
Good.
It came from somewhere else.
Good. It comes from elsewhere. And this, yes, Cheryl.
I don't know if anyone said this yet, but in one of these holidays, we're thanking, the other one we're asking.
Okay. One is thanking, the other one is asking. Good. And this is a great lesson for me because very often when we say something or we write something or we do something a certain way, right, we figure everyone's got to understand what I'm thinking, right? And actually, chances are no one understands. But because we think they must understand what I'm thinking and they're not reacting the way that I want, I get insulted, I get upset, right? When we have to realize that people have no clue what's going on in your head. So to me, I did Thanksgiving in a very light font, right? And Halloween in a very dark font. To me, the idea was the writing on the sheet, right? Halloween is light, it's bright.
Not like
I'm sorry, Thanksgiving is light and bright, and Halloween is dark. All right. One is something that we do get involved with, the other is something that we should not get involved with. That's what I thought by changing the shading on Thanksgiving to make it light and Halloween to make it dark.
I never feel light after Halloween.
Huh?
I never feel light after Halloween.
No, on the contrary.
I mean after Thanksgiving.
Oh,
I never feel light
okay.
after Thanksgiving.
And it's interesting because, for me, growing up as a Jewish kid in New York, going to Jewish school and Jewish high school, and we were right across from this public school park. Well, we would go during our recess and we would play, and after the school was out, there'd be the other youth from the neighborhood, and it was a real Archie Bunker type of neighborhood. And there would invariably be fistfights that went along with that. that was just common fare, especially if I would beat them in basketball, which I was pretty good at. But I was not very good at fighting, so it didn't end up working out all that well, right? And Halloween was a time that we knew. Now, my yeshiva high school schedule was we'd start at 7:30, I think it was, with davening with minyan, and we would finish all of our religious studies at 3:30 in the afternoon. Then from 3:30 to 6:30, we would take all of our English courses and regents, whatever was required then in New York, and we finish at 6:30 every evening, except the Thursday we had what was called Mishmar. We'd have an extra learning session afterwards till about 8:30. So you can imagine that was a real favorite of many of us. Anyhow, but getting out 6:30 on Halloween, we just knew that eggs were being thrown at us on our way going from the building into the bus that we would take. It was a public bus that we would take, right, in order to get back to our respective homes, neighborhoods. And for me, one of the most beautiful aspects of the many beautiful aspects of living in Israel, one of the most beautiful aspects was not knowing that Halloween had come and gone. It just being completely beyond the realm of my consciousness. It was good riddance. But how are we supposed to look in general when it comes to these secular holidays? Okay? And holidays, we need to understand, right? Is it actually a holiday? But in general, how are we supposed to look at that? So let's go to some of the sources. Let me pick it up over here. I agree with that. Right? Right? Yes. 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 Right? It used to be a night to go and arouse the spirits and beat up the Jews. Right? That's what it used to be, and that's what it still was in Forest Hills circa 1977, 78, 79 during my high school years. Yeah. And yeah.
And Halloween is a festival of death. Purim is a festival of light.
Yeah.
Light.
Yeah. The only real connection between Purim and Halloween is getting costumes at a discount after Halloween and getting it for your kids for Purim. That's basically the only parallels that can be brought. Yes, Dov.
Halloween, you're making some candle and some pumpkin, whatever. And what do? We have Hanukkah. We're putting some lights out there.
Nice.
And about Thanksgiving, it's all in Hanukkah.
Okay. So let's look at some of the sources. Okay. First source is in Vayikra, in Leviticus. We are commanded, "V'lo telchu b'chukot hagoy." Do not follow the practices of the nation. Asher ani mishaleach mipneichem. Right, you go into the land of Israel, and there is a nation there that I am sending out to make room for you. Right? So if they're on their way out, then chances are their practices are not what you should be emulating. Lo telchu, v'lo telchu, do not go in the chukot, in the practices of the goy of the nation, asher ani mishalech nechem, that I'm sending out from before you. Ki et kol eila asu, all of these they have done, va'akutz bam, God says, and I was abhorred by them. So this is, in halachic jargon, the term that's used as chukas akum, the ways of the idolaters. And we are commanded not to follow in their ways. Similarly, the next source again in Vayikra Yudchet Gimel, chapter 18, verse 3, Kamase Eretz Mitzrayim, Asher Yeshaftem Ba Lo Ta'asu. Like the ways, the manner, the practice of the land of Egypt that you live there, do not do that. Uchamase Eretz Canaan, and like the way of the land of the Canaan, the Canaanites, Shanei Mevi Etchem Shama, that I'm going to bring you there. Lo ta'asu, do not do. Uvechukotehem lo telechu. And their laws, their ways, their practices, lo telechu. Do not follow in their ways. Rambam codifies this, and then we'll see Shulchan Aruch. Rambam codifies, they have it both in Hebrew and in English. Rambam, Laws of Idolatry, 11, chapter 11, 1 and 3. Ein holchim b'chukot hovdei kochavim. We do not go follow the statutes, the ways of the idolaters. V'lo midamin lahen. Nor do we look to resemble them. Lo b'malbush, not in their way of dress. V'lo b'seyar, nor in their haircuts. Those who have options with their hair, not all of us do, but not in their manner of dress, not in their hairdos, v'chayotze bahen, or similar such things. Shenemar, as it says, and that's our pasuk. Lo telchu b'chukot hagoyim. Do not follow the practices of the nations. V'nemar, it says, u'b'chukotehem lo telechu, and in their ways you shall not go. V'nemar hishamer lecha. Right? Be careful, lest tinakesh acharem, you will stumble, you will inquire, you'll go see how to do as they're doing. Hakol, it's interesting. Going back to my very unpleasant high school experiences, I had a real wake up call. Ended one time when it was a day I didn't have school, and so I was just riding my bike around the neighborhood, and I ended up riding around close to that schoolyard, right? And I was wearing a concert T-shirt of a group that I had gone to see giving a concert in Madison Square Garden, and I was wearing a pair of jeans and a concert T-shirt, and I rode my bike past that schoolyard, and they didn't recognize me in the way. Maybe I probably had a kippah on. Yeah, I wear a kippah or a hat or a baseball hat or something like that, right? But what struck me as I was riding past was that they were blasting on their boom boxes. That's what people used to have before we had the earbuds, right? They were blasting on their boom boxes the music of the band that I was wearing on my shirt. And I had the thought that if those band members would be at the park when they would be starting up with their cursing and shouting, leading to fistfights, I had thought, I wonder which side these band members that I'm wearing on my chest, which side would they be on? And maybe I shouldn't be wearing them on my chest. Maybe I shouldn't be quite so enamored by them. Just a thought that I had that made me realize that maybe that which I'm trying to emulate, maybe it's not the best idea. Yes, Allah. I lived in Queens, Forest Hills, and then right beyond Forest Hills Gardens, there was a real Archie Bunker type of neighborhood, and a lot of German immigrants, and it wasn't fun. It was not fun. No, dealing with them was definitely not fun. Yeah, definitely not fun.
Rabbi?
Yeah. Yes.
So I grew up in the Midwest, and we got what you're talking about every Easter. Easters were where you stayed inside if you could, and you went out to clean up what they did to the cars and the windows on your house after that. We didn't have that with Halloween. And I'm sorry for your story. I don't mean to make it diminish it.
I'm sorry for your Easter. Yeah.
It's terrible. They call you on the phone, and anyway.
Yeah.
So we had phone books in those days. There were no sheltered numbers.
Yeah.
One of the things, so I raised my kids in Aliso Viejo, and they have a separation, I think because of the Christian community, between Harvest Festival, which they do use for, proselytizing, but harvest as in the harvest. So you decorate the front of your apartment or house with pumpkins and Indian corn and things that have to do with the harvest. We always did that, and I let the kids trick or treat, just like very limited around the immediate.
Yeah.
But we never did the skeletons and the death and any of that. And I think there's another culture in Halloween that has nothing to do with
That's true. That's true. I would say the vast majority of the Halloweeners are not going back to the spirits and whatever else.
Yeah,
Right?
just
They like the
just
spider web and stuff like that. But we're going to come to that. Let's go further in the Rambam. Hakol b'inyan echad hu mazhir. It's all the same idea that's being warned. Shelo yidamer lahen. That we should not try to emulate them. El Yisroel muvdal mehen. But the Jews should be separated from them. The adu of a malbusho, and known by his what he wears, ubishar ma'asav, and with his actions. Kamoshu muvdal mehem b'mada'o b'deosav, as he is different in terms of his understanding and his theocracy. The Cheno Omer, and it says, "V'avdil etchem min ha'amim." You've been separated from amongst the nations. Lo yilbash, don't wear garments hamyuchad lehen, that are their uniforms. Lo yigadel tzitzit rosho, k'mo tzit rosham, don't have your hairdos like their hairdos. Lo yigale min atzidadin v'aniach hasea be'emtza, don't shave off the sides of your head and have a mohawk in the middle, right? That ship has sailed. Kamosha Haino sin, as they do. Nikra bluriyat, that's what they call the blurry type of hairdo. Right, all these different types of hairdos that they would do. Don't copy their buildings. But Rama actually says that one will get lashes for doing these things. The Rama goes further, Steve, and says, Yisroel shahaya karov l'malchut. Let's say a Jew who has, an English puts it well, an important position in a Gentile kingdom. And needs to sit in their courts before the kings. Right, and it would be very embarrassing if he's sticking out like a sore thumb. Then he'll be allowed to wear those clothing which resembles theirs and shave the hair on his face as they do, right? And that's why in our world today, people wear regular business attire. People, yeah, that's true. Hasidim, as a rule, don't, right? Yeah, but that is the allowance for it. Okay, it says in Torah that you can't cut off, not just shave, cut off the corners of the head, right? And so that is the sideburns. One does not need to grow them long. One does not need to any of that. One is not allowed to cut them off. Okay, and there are those, mostly Hasidim, who have the custom then to never cut it or to grow it long. But there is no mitzvah to grow it long. There is a prohibition against cutting it off. Now, when it comes to the beard, so there one, by the payot, the issue is cutting it off no matter what means you use to cut it off. By the beard, there is a prohibition against using a blade, a ta'ar, right? But an electric shaver, right, which uses a scissor motion, like the three head in Orelka, whatever it is, that uses a scissor motion as opposed to a blade. So that is perfectly fine to shave.
It's not against the.
Correct. There are prohibitions as to how one would be allowed to remove the facial hair, but if one is amongst the Gentile world, and you have many rabbis who are clean shaven. Yeah.
You should say the 13 blessings are it's nice to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also the reason they say payas is because payas,
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Yes, Steve.
When the Torah speaks about Obed Kotabim, rabbis, from what I understand, always interpret that as stam, any non-Jewish person. And I'd always love to make a differentiation Is there room to make a differentiation?
Okay. Yes, there is room to make a differentiation, and let's see over here. Okay, this I don't have in English, but I'll translate for you, which is the Tosafot in Avodah Zarah. The Gemara there is talking about when a Jewish king would die, so then they would burn all of his items, that no one else should use it. Huh?
They will.
Even a Jewish practice, right? So the Gemara there asked, right, that is it not, well, is it an issue of a chok, of one of the ordinances, one of the practices of the idolaters? And therefore, why is that a practice that was done amongst Jewish kings, by the Jewish people, amongst Jewish kings? Therefore, lekach perish the Ri, one of the Baitos explains, the trei gavne chuka havu. There are two different types of practices, ordinances. Echad, one she'osin lahem chok lavodas kochavim, one that they do as that's part of their idolatrous practice. The echad she'osin l'shem dat hevel v'shtut shalahem, and another one they're doing it because of some nonsensical belief, not necessarily a worship to idolatry, but some hevel v'shtut, hevel, nonsense, stupidity that they do. Those are the things that we are not allowed to follow. But let's say something that they're doing, like the burning of which was a way of showing honor to their king, right? That once the king used this, it should not be denigrated by anyone else using that which the king used. So therefore, that would not fall into this rubric of either idolatrous practice or hevel v'shtut, nonsensical, and therefore it would not be limited or precluded because this is the way of the goyim, the way of the nations. Let's see how this filters its way down into halacha, and then we will then we will deal with the light Thanksgiving and the dark Halloween, and then we'll hear some of the more contemporary poskim, halachic decisors, and their views on it. So Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law, Yoredeya 178:1, where it is Shalo Lilvosh Kamalbusha. I have it both in Hebrew and English. Hebrew is on the bottom of the first side. English is on the second side. So feel free to follow however you feel comfortable. Not to wear Kamalbusha, the garments of Ovdei Kochavim, and there are 3 seifim. There are 3 paragraphs here. We're going to do the first one. Ein holchim b'chlukas Ovdei Kochavim. Now, this is Rav Yosef Karo. Rav Yosef Karo is drawing, in his Code of Jewish Law, is drawing from Rambam, Maimonides that we quoted above, and many of the other halachic deciders, right, including in this case the Tosfot who chimed in on this, and others. So he rules, Ein holchim, we should not go b'chukot in the practices of the Kochavim, below midamin lahem, nor should we try to be like them. He's quoting there the Tur b'shem HaRambam, and we saw the Rambam. Lo yilvosh malbush hamiyuchad lehem. One should not wear garments that are specific to them. Lo yigadel tzitzit rosho, nor should the hair of his head, the way he cuts his hair, kamot tzitzit rosham. Lo yigaleach min atzadin. Right, again, don't shave off the sides. V'aniach haser b'emsa, leaving the hair in the middle. Right, to remove all that and just leave in the back. Some of us have that naturally. What can we do at this point? And don't build these palaces like they do, right? Haggah. So that is the Shulchan Aruch, and then we have the Ramah's notes on this. I've mentioned a number of times. Rabbi Beryl Wine speaks about this very beautifully, that as Rav Yosef Karo in Tzfat was coming out with his Code of Jewish Law, at the same time, Rav Moshe Isserles in Europe was coming out with his Code of Jewish Law. And Rav Yosef Karo finished his first, sent a copy to Rav Moshe Isserles to look over it. And he realized that if he was going to publish his own, we would have almost like two Torahs, a Sephardic Torah and an Ashkenazic Torah. And therefore he shelved his own project. And instead, what he did was he would write gloss, he would write notes on the Shulchan Aruch. And that's why Ashkenazim and Sephardim all have one code of Jewish law, Shulchan Aruch. You have the larger font that is of Yosef Karo, and there are times in a smaller font where we'll have Hagot HaRamah, the notes of the Ramah, where he will say, and our custom is to do it a little bit differently. We had in our Gemara class that Shulchan Aruch rules when a person putting on tefillin, you make one bracha on the shel yad, on the hand tefillin, that bracha goes for the hand and the head. And there the Ramah adds in the minhag amongst Bnei Ashkenaz is to make one bracha on the hand, that goes on the hand, on the head, so don't talk in between, but to make an additional bracha on the head. When it comes to Hilchos Chanukah coming up, we have Rosh Chodesh tonight and tomorrow of the month of Kislev, the month of Chanukah. So there, the Shulchan Aruch says there is one Chanukiah per household, period. Whether there's one man there, whether there's 20 men there, there's one. And then Ramah says, and our custom is each person lights a Chanukiah. So he will put in glosses where he differs or where he wants to expound further, where Rav Yosef Karo did not. So here we have the Haggah, and in the English I did it in a Ramah, bold letters, and I have it italicized. In Hebrew, it's just a slightly smaller font, maybe. I'm not even sure if it is smaller. We should be different in our garments, in our actions. This is only prohibited when it comes to a matter that the idolaters are doing that in order to be immodest. Right? At that time, red garments were considered to be immodest garments. So following their styles, right? When it's immodest styles, certainly that's going to be an issue. The Kadoma Lizet, yes?
Rabbi, how about women? As far as the garment and stuff like that.
So certainly immodesty, right? If the style is these micro mini skirts, right? Then certainly that would be an issue that should not be emulated, right?
It seems like the modesty here, though, is not about mini skirts, but about the red clothes was the clothes of royalty, and you're not being modest in the sense that you're being boasted about I'm so important.
Perhaps, right? Keep in mind that going back all the way back, forget about Babylonian times, forget about Shulchan Aruch times, going back all the way to the 1950s, if you watch some old episodes of The Honeymooners, right? So Alice was going to go out to a, whatever it was, maybe it was Halloween, whatever it was, right? In an outfit, right? This masquerade party, and her skirt was above her knee. And Ralph said, there's no way, Alice, to the moon, right? You're not going out dressed like that, So, in terms of the modesty, right, it was a very different world. Very, very, very different world. Yeah.
Rabbi?
There are, Sephardic, it's a little more lenient on that. Yeah.
Rabbi?
Yes.
So the colors, going back, using art history references, the colors meant things in their cultures that they don't mean now.
Yeah.
So red was an important person who had wealth and had accumulated a certain, depending on the culture, and I'm not making this as a blanket statement.
Okay. I hear that. Yes.
Red,
yeah.
It wasn't just that red was
the modesty might mean, as Steve was saying, as you're saying, the modesty might mean presenting yourself as as a prominent member of society when that's not actually who and what you are. Okay.
Yes.
Or malbushe that are pritzut, that are actually immodest. Or a practice that they have, the ain tam bidavar. And there doesn't seem to be any reason, at least that we know about the matter, to ikal mechash. That we need to be concerned mishum darkei mori. Maybe this is from their old culture. V'yesh bo shemetz avodos kochavim. And there is still a tinge, a stain of idolatrous practice, me'avotehem, from going back generations. That we have to stay away from. And this is speaking like we saw in that Tosfot. If there's any tinge of idolatry, or even if it seems it's just nonsensical without any reason, we're concerned it might have some idolatrous roots. Aval, but davar shenagu l'toelet, but something that has a purpose. Right? That an established doctor, yesh l'malbush miyuchad, right? He has a certain uniform. I'm sorry, scrubs or the white jacket, right? With that little snake pole insignia from the Torah, right? So that is shenika boshu rofe uman. That shows that he is a certified doctor. So there won't be any issue in wearing that. Right? Or something that you're doing because of honor or a different reason, that would be permitted. Lachain, now addressing what we saw in the Tosafot before, Amru, Sorfin ala malachim. That's why the Gemara there says that you can burn the objects of kings, right? In a day where we had to hold the kings in awe, right? That would not go into the category of Darkei Ha'emori. Okay, so now let's look at the holidays that we mentioned, the secular holidays that we mentioned before. Okay, not holy days, but holidays with an I, one word, not Y, two words. Okay, so Halloween certainly has its very clear roots in pagan rituals, right? That no one is denying. Okay, so for a Jew to be celebrating Halloween in any way, and I would say even sending kids out to trick or treat, right, is not what we should be participating in. Hence the dark font. Okay, yes, Alan. Free candy.
I say laugh at you give. And on
Right.
Thanksgiving, you're teaching the kids to take. And
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Point that someone else I made also. I think Cheryl made that point, right? You know, it's not a Jewish concept to teach kids to take. It's a Jewish concept to teach kids to give. Okay, so it's striking out on all counts. Now, that's not to say that if kids would knock on my door, right, that I wouldn't have a couple of candies to give them, right? Yeah. Actually, they say about Rav Pam, who was Rosh Hashiva of one of the major yeshivas in Brooklyn, that his wife would make popcorn, right, and give the kids when they would come around, give them each a little bag of popcorn, right? The way it works in in my house, my street, there's not a lot going on over there, and you have to open a gate to come through to get to my front door, so kids don't come. Maybe the fact that I turn off all the lights, no, that's not true. but kids end up not coming through. If they would come through, so then I would say, here, kids, enjoy this, right? And give them some. But for us to be participating in it, that would certainly not be the case. Let's look at Thanksgiving. Let's look at the origins of Thanksgiving. Americans commonly trace holiday Thanksgiving to the 1621 Pilgrim celebration at Plymouth Plantation, Massachusetts. The Pilgrims were expressing gratitude to God for a successful harvest after surviving a particularly harsh winter, mainly due to the aid of Squanto, the English-speaking Native American, and the Wampanoag tribe, who taught them how to hunt turkeys and plant maize in the New World and shared food supplies with them. Many would say the next year they killed all the Indians, but that's another story. Okay. A second Thanksgiving was observed on July 30th 1623, in appreciation of an abundant harvest after a refreshing 14-day rain, well, we almost had that, following a nearly catastrophic drought. In 1777, okay, so going 150 years forward from those first pilgrim celebrations, during the Revolutionary War, when the first national proclamation of Thanksgiving was given by the Continental Congress. Okay, in 1782, John Hanson, the first United States president under the Articles of Confederation, declared the fourth Thursday of every November to be observed as Thanksgiving. Several years later, President George Washington issued the first national Thanksgiving proclamation under the Constitution, designating November 26th, 1789 as a day of Thanksgiving. He did so again in 1795, but it was not an annual thing. It was not until 1863, in the midst of the Civil War, that the holiday as we know it was formally established by President Abraham Lincoln. Thanksgiving has since been observed annually as a national holiday across the United States, right? Mincha, 8:30 that Thursday, Shacharis, 8:30 that morning. But our subject is defining how Thanksgiving observance is viewed by halacha. Okay, so as this, right, this was a holiday celebrated as giving thanks to God. So as opposed to free candy, I would say that giving thanks to God is a very, very Jewish concept. Of course, it shouldn't be done one day a year, right? It's done every morning by the first words we utter, which is the Moda Ani. We thank you, God. Thanks we give to you, God, right? I remember we were living in Muncie, and we recently moved to the States, and there was a family that was selling a dining room set secondhand. So we went to take a look at it, right? And it was so interesting, right? I forget exactly when it was, but basically it was a non-Jewish family. And after Christmas, it was set for Thanksgiving, meaning those were the 2 days when they would have a big family get together, right? And Natalie was like, she was flying once, and it was before Thanksgiving, and all these television shows on the plane were about, don't worry, you can handle it, right? Don't get overly stressed about the 6 guests that you're having for Thanksgiving, right? And you're like, are you kidding me? Right? Have you heard about Shabbos? Every week, right? But the idea of a Thanksgiving, right, is a positive idea. It's not based on anything that is idolatrous. It is based on giving thanks to God. At the same time, it is not our holiday. It is not a Jewish holiday. So how have different poskim viewed this? Poskim are those who we look to for guidance on halachic Jewish law matters. So in our more recent world, Rav Moshe Feinstein of blessed memory passed away in the early 1990s. He was an authority that carried incredible weight, right? He was of a very diminutive stature, right? Maybe 5 feet tall, right? But he was a heavyweight, and he carried the halakhic world in the United States, in Israel, right? Amongst the Hasidic communities, right? He was a super heavyweight. Rav Moshe Feinstein in the earlier tshuvos are halachic responsa. When he's responding to questions posed, he seems to be against the idea of Thanksgiving celebration. Nevertheless, in his later ones, he allows a Thanksgiving observance. He notes that it is not a religious celebration, right? So it should not be viewed as a religious celebration. It should not be viewed as a mitzvah, as an obligation, with turkey being served, as long as it is not seen as an obligatory annual celebration, but rather as a periodical simchas rishus, Simchas Rishus, Simchas is a joyous celebration. Rishus, that is non-obligatory, a voluntary way of having simcha. All the same, Rabbi concludes that it is still preferable not to have a celebration bedafka for Thanksgiving. Okay, Melissa Silver, Yosef Soloveitchik, Yehuda Herzl Henkin, and others maintain that Thanksgiving is only a day of thanks and not, heaven forbid, for idol celebration. Therefore, eating turkey on Thanksgiving cannot be considered chukos hagoyim, as we began with, right? Following in the practices of the nations. So
Rabbi?
we shouldn't turn it into, you've got to have, it doesn't become a Seder Pesach. You have to lean while you're eating your turkey. No one says that, right? But you have to have this, you have to have that, But to have a family get together, certainly in the modern Orthodox world, it is very, very accepted and even encouraged to take advantage of a day where people are off from work, right? And it's a beautiful time for family to get together, right? Janet did mention from Rebbitzin Landau that she didn't like to do it because, hey, you got Friday night coming right afterwards, right? For those who want to do both and not impede, so Ness is sponsoring a beautiful Thanksgiving meal here. That'll be catered here at 1 p.m. right on Thursday. Just please, there's a suggested donation, but it's not a requirement. And please do plan to join us. And just do RSVP online so that we'll know how much to prepare. I'm planning on reaching out to the police chief, who's been a good friend of ours, and letting him know that if any of the officers, any of his staff, right, who will be working that day and might be busy that day, they should please stop in at 1 p.m. And they don't have to stay for long. They can eat and run, but they should please know that they're welcome. Yes, Bracha.
This was established, did that meat, the turkey, become kosher?
Okay, so that's interesting. There is some question marks, right, about an unbroken tradition of turkey being kosher, but I would say the vast majority of poskim say that turkey is not an issue. What is interesting is the Hebrew word for turkey is hodu. Right? And Hodu also means thanks, right? So it works out very well that Thanksgiving, they serve turkey. Yes, Janet?
That the Sephardim were the first Jews to land in this area, thought it was they thought it was similar, that whoever was their hosting at that time thought it was similar enough to the others where there was kosher that they said okay. And then other poskim Ashkenaz, there was, as you say, this big deal, but they realized that there is this unbroken tradition amongst
Okay.
and
I don't know all that much about it, quite honestly. That could be an interesting. Maybe next year's Thanksgiving we'll do on the kashrut of a turkey.
Rabbi. So, Rabbi.
Yeah. Yes.
So my grandparents who came from Russia used to celebrate Thanksgiving specifically because they felt it was important to show gratitude that the Jews had a home, because they both lost family in World War II. And so
certainly Jews should feel tremendous gratitude to this country that has been a refuge, that has given us an equal playing field, that has not tied our hands behind our back, has not discriminated against us. Certainly Jews need to feel a tremendous hakarat hatov, a tremendous appreciation to this great country. The question, though, would be, because there are those that say yes, but don't turn it into one of their holidays. And there are those, I said over here at the bottom, there are those that disagree. But again, in the modern Orthodox world, it is very, very widely accepted, not an issue whatsoever.
So what year?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't want to hold people hostage. I'll take some more points and questions, but I do want to officially close out the class. and anyone who needs to go is more than welcome to go. And any, yes, Dove?
Okay. Isn't it a Jewish thing that they said, okay, Thanksgiving's only gonna be on Thursday, never on Shabbat? Never.
Okay,
So I was.
duly noted. Duly noted. Okay. Okay. Good seeing everybody. Next Thursday, again, we're not going to have lunch and learn, but there will be a Thanksgiving hosted by Ness and Ness Al-Bagli. We had the whole Sefer Torah that he dedicated to the shul. One of our daily minyan attendees. He's here Shabbos morning at the first minyan, and he's a wonderful guy.
And also, unless people, they can do 4 days at a special hotel, and they're gonna have that. So you know, I'll
Okay.
What, so Thanksgiving and then Shabbat? And then.
So 3-4 days at a hotel?
Yes.
Hey, I'll go there. Okay. I mean, Turkey's nice, but hey, you know, a getaway is also nice. Okay, we'll call it over here, my friends. Yes. Yes. And thank you again, Jan.